And Christopher, you're up.
All right. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. It's afternoon here now. Grace, can you hear me?
I can. You sound great.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Christopher Kraus, your Learning and Development Specialist at Embraer, and I want to welcome you to the remote learning webinar for this week. Our topic today is building resiliency for managers, and our special guest today is Grace Lichtenstein. Grace, did I say your last name correctly?
Close enough, yes.
Okay, good. We'll just say Grace. So, guys, I'm really excited to have Grace on the call with us. I'm really looking forward to this session. And, Grace, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christopher. And I am so glad you all are here. Let me tell you why. I'm a holistic psychotherapist, and I've been doing this work, whether it's therapy, coaching, consulting, training, speaking, for 22 years now. And so I've actually surpassed that 20-year mark. Yes, 22 years. And in that time, I've worked with organizations and individuals in 49 states and in 14 foreign countries, helping them become healthier, more productive, and reduce their stress, which is a really neat way of saying resilience. Yeah, so this is kind of my thing. So I'm glad that you're here because this is kind of my thing. The other reason is oh my goodness, do we have a lot going on, don't we, right? With everything that's been going on over the last few months, it's really heavy. And so many of us have recognized that we really have been forced, no, we've not been forced. We've been given the opportunity to really take these situations and use them to learn and grow. And so throughout today's session, you might hear me sounding like cheesy motivational posters, but it really is true, right? The situations we're in, like I said, oh my goodness, right? And what we get to go ahead and do is really use these as opportunities to become better. There's a saying in the mental health field, we grow at the speed of pain. Yay, but it really is true when you think about it, right? Because when do we learn and grow the most? When we're uncomfortable, really. Okay, so I'm glad that you're here because I'm going to give you some tools, some resources, maybe even some insights about how we can go ahead and use our day-to-day and use the big picture experience that we're having to learn and grow and be better. And you're even going to have a homework assignment at the end. It's going to be very simple, but you'll even have a homework assignment at the end to help with that. Okay, now, in my humble opinion, it's really cool that I've been doing this for so long. There is a downside to that, though, and the downside is that because I've been doing this for so long, everything that I say, it makes perfect sense to me, in my head. If at any point what I say doesn't make perfect sense to you in your head, or if you have a general question, or you want to share a resource, I love that. I love that when that happens. Or even if you completely disagree with what I have to say, for those of you attending live, can you use the chat feature, please? Bunches and bunches? That would be awesome. And you don't have to wait till the end. I mean, we will have a few minutes at the end for any questions or comments or anything, but you don't have to wait. And I would actually kind of prefer you didn't, partly because if you're anything like me and you wait to say something, will you remember it? I don't. I have a 15-second memory, right? It's gone. The other thing is that I really do want to give you the absolute best response I can, and context can be really helpful for me. So if I say something, it prompts a thought or a question for you. You throw it there in the chat. I'll see it. I'll probably finish saying what I'm saying, and then go to it and probably give you a better response because I know the context, right? I know it prompted it, okay? So that is my wish and goal for today is that you get everything that you need. So go ahead and use that chat to help me out with that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and skip over this because it kind of summarizes it on this next one. The concepts that we're going to go over today is, first of all, what resilience is, okay, and then some of the characteristics. Now, the beautiful thing is, and I'm going to mention this again, the beautiful thing is that resilience is a skill set. It is something that we can develop. So if you're not really good at it, you can become good, absolutely. If you're good, you can become even better, right, and it continues on and on. So we're going to get an idea of what it is and what the characteristics are so we can go ahead and develop that skill, develop those characteristics. And then we're going to look at what resilience is in terms of life, right? We grow at the speed of pain. that usually includes change, right? That's what makes us uncomfortable. And so we're going to be talking about change and transition and how we can go ahead and use those changes in a real positive way. Okay, we might not necessarily enjoy it, but we can use them in a positive way and be able to transition there, okay? The other thing is that as managers, being aware of how people respond to change and how no matter how different it is from person to person, it's natural, it's normal. It can actually be very, very healthy and helpful. Being aware of those changes, we're going to respond to those responses, okay, in a more effective way. And then I'm going to go ahead and encourage all of you more than once to make sure that you take care of yourselves, because that's something a lot of y'all, I'm guessing, don't do, okay? And so we want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves so we can help other people go through all of this, right? So we can become more resilient ourselves to help support the other people, okay? And then I'm going to give you some homework. So let's get a definition out here. And I know you see it, I know you can read it, but I'm going to go ahead and read it just because I like giving emphasis on it. Resilience is the ability to withstand adverse events and stressful situations without falling apart by actively and positively coping with stress. Some of you have heard thriving beyond surviving, right? And that's really what resilience is. So it's not just getting through the stressful events, not just surviving. And that's important, right? We want to go ahead and do that. But it's what we do beyond that. Excuse me. It's what we do beyond that. One of the things that I talk with my individual clients about, my therapeutic coaching clients, is becoming an active participant in their lives. And that is really when we are the healthiest, when we're the active participants. And for many of us, we haven't been an active participant in our lives in decades, some of us, right? Because we got in that rut. It started off as a routine, right? And then it just really got a rut. And think about it. How many of us a year ago really did the same thing pretty much every day, after week, after month, after year, after decade? And while it's safe and secure, right, it's not really about learning and growing and becoming better. And what happens is believe it or not, even though it feels safe and secure, that's actually stressful. It's actually negatively stressful. So what we want to go ahead and do is become active participants. Be fully aware of what's going on, being able to put that energy out there. And with all the change that's been happening in our lives over these last few months, we really are, it's an opportunity, right, to do that. And for example, now, before I give you this example, I just want to let you know, I have to tell you, I am a parenting expert. I am, like legitimately. Like I went to school for this stuff. And I've been a nanny and a preschool teacher. I used to run a family program, right? So I'm the stuff when it comes to parenting. And I have to tell you, these last 6 months, I have been more of an active participant in my parenting. I mean, not just like activities, but I've been more aware of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and the impacts and my daughter's responses and what's important to her. And I've been more of an active participant in her life as a parent since probably she was born, because I've had to. I was encouraged to, right? And I'm really reaping huge benefits. The relationship, it's not just with my daughter, it's with my husband, with my coworkers, my friends, right? Things like that. And so what we want to go ahead and do is not just survive, not get in that rut, that routine where we make it through, but actually being able to use these opportunities to become better, being active participants, okay? And I just want you to think for just a moment, just kind of imagine, what would life be like if you were an active participant in your home life, in your social life, in your work life, and the people that you're in system with, right, in your family system, your social system, your work system, what if they were all active participants as well? What would that be like, right? That'd be pretty cool, don't you think? Okay, so that's what we're aiming for here. So some of the characteristics, like I said, this is a skill set, so you can go ahead and develop this no matter how good or not good you are on that continuum, okay? So one of the things is an awareness of what's happening, right? Becoming that active participant, okay? Being aware of what impacts us, how we impact others, okay? Becoming aware of what's going around us. And then recognizing that these setbacks are going to happen. One of the other things I like training around is positive attitude. A positive attitude is not pretending everything's wonderful. even though that's what we're taught we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to pretend everything's great, especially on social media, okay? And it's not. That's not actually healthy. If you know somebody that everything is great all the time, every second of every day, they're either self-actualized, which statistically is unlikely, they're psychotic, they're on really good medication, or, right, they're putting forth that facade, that mask. And so we get to go ahead and look at, we grow at the speed of pain. We get to go ahead and look at the stuff that's happening, the problems, the barriers, the issues, really as, okay, what am I going to do about this? And then put our energy into solutions. So ultimately, a positive attitude is a solution-focused attitude, but we need to know what the setbacks, the problems, the barriers are to begin with, right? Otherwise, how are we going to come up with a solution? The other thing is, and this is something that if you haven't done like kind of a deeper dive into this, I do recommend. There's so many resources out there. Becoming emotionally intelligent. Our success, really in all areas of our life, it comes down to relationship. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, I think a lot of you know the number one reason that people leave their jobs is the relationship with their manager or supervisor. It's not the tasks, it's not the money. I mean, those are factors, but the primary reason is, okay, our success in all areas of life is based on relationship. Good relationship is being very emotionally intelligent, okay, being aware of our feelings, what they mean to us, how we impact others, what's going on with others and their feelings, okay. That's what healthy relationships are based on, okay. And so we get, it doesn't mean you have to be all touchy-feely, okay, but it does mean we get to be aware. When we become more emotionally intelligent and we're aware of what our feelings mean for us, how we impact others, what their feelings are for them, what happens is that we're able to navigate tough situations more effectively because we're less likely to be reactive. We're more likely to be responsive. And we can go ahead and understand why these tough situations are tough. We're going to have feelings when stuff is important to us. If it's not important to us, we don't have feelings about it. Okay, so becoming more emotionally intelligent gives us a lot of ability, a greater ability to go ahead and understand what is really happening in these situations, which makes us better at handling them, okay? So we'll develop strong problem-solving skills, okay? We're looking at the opportunity. We're focusing on solutions. We're emotionally intelligent. Oh, my gosh, right? We're going to be awesome in the problem-solving. And then, have I mentioned self-care? Yeah, I think I might be mentioning that a few times today. One of the big things, and this can be really hard for a lot of people, is that we are taught or we believe we have to do it ourselves, right? We're the expert. We're the one in charge. And you know what? There are a lot of times we are. Absolutely. And sometimes the best thing to do is to reach out for that support. So we get to go ahead and actually be vulnerable in these situations, which again, when we talk about healthy relationships, when we're talking about emotional intelligence, when we're talking about looking for solutions, right? Sometimes the solution isn't ours. Sometimes we need to go ahead and reach out, okay? And sometimes saying, I can't. That's not a bad thing. Sometimes the way we thrive is we realize we just need to survive, right? We need to get through it, and what do we need to do beyond that, okay? So those are all the characteristics that we all can continue to develop, okay? I've been teaching this for 22 years, and I can still get better at myself, okay? Now, the other thing is, and these are just some little nuances to what we've been talking about, when we do this, what's going to happen is that we're actually going to change our stress response. We're always going to have stress, right? If we're living, we have stress, which we need stress. I mean, have you ever heard the term blood pressure? Yeah, if we don't have enough blood pressure, things aren't going so well, okay? And so what we want to go ahead and do is actually be able to use stress to our advantage, because there is positive and negative stress. Negative stress is called distress, and it's very, very distressing. Positive stress is called eustress, E-U-S-T-R-E-S-S, and it's actually motivating. That's what gets us excited. This is what gives us the energy and the focus to make the change, take those healthy risks. We want that. The beautiful thing is the difference between positive and negative stress really a lot of times doesn't have anything to do or much to do with the situation. The difference is perceived control. Okay, and so we're looking at primary and secondary control. The more control we have. Now, I'm not saying we should all be control freaks. Okay, that's not healthy. But we should be able to go ahead and look at, if we're resilient, be able to look at what we can control about a situation and put our energy in that. right? So sometimes we can actually change the situation itself, right? We can do something about it, right? With that solution focus, awesome, right? We're not being reactive, okay, all that other stuff. The secondary control is how we think about a situation. We actually create our reality. And so how we create our reality changes how we feel about it. If you've been in therapy in the last, 20, 30 years, chances are your therapist has followed a modality such as rational motive behavioral therapy, REBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, or dialectic behavioral therapy, DBT. And what they all have in common is they all look at the relationship between our feelings, our thoughts and beliefs, and our behaviors, right? Primary control is about changing the situation, right? That's the behaviors. So now let's look at the feelings and the thoughts and beliefs, okay? Secondary control is changing how we think about things to change how we respond to it. As a matter of fact, in REBT, the first of the three modalities I mentioned, there's actually a formula for this. Okay, for those of you taking notes, I'm going to give you the formula. You ready? Okay, I'm going to go slow. ABC. Yeah, that's it. Okay. And basically what REBT and CBT and DBT all talk about is that we have A, the activating event, the trigger, the person, place, or thing. And then we have C, the emotional consequence, our feeling. And we're taught A results in C. But what REBT, CBT, DBT all talk about is that while the activating event will trigger the process that results in emotional consequence, it's actually the belief, the B about it, that is responsible. So if you want to change how you feel about something, change how you think about it. One huge thing for me that's been wonderful for my personal and professional growth is changing taking on a very powerful belief. And that belief is, nobody is ever mean to me. I actually believe that. Now, are people mean around me? All the time. Is people's meanness exuding in my direction? Absolutely. The thing is, though, is that when people are mean, that's about them, right? They're being mean, okay? And so what happens is that when I have the belief that nobody's mean to me, that they might be behaving badly, I might need to hold them accountable, but it's not about me necessarily. Oh my gosh, I don't take things personally. I don't get super stressed out about things. I'm much better at doing conflict and holding people accountable. It completely changes how I think about situations. As a matter of fact, most of the time now, when other people perceive that person as being mean to me, I perceive it as, oh, they're giving me some tough feedback. Hey, that's great. Thank you. And I'm not being snarky. It's a genuine thank you for that information. Changes everything. Okay, and so what we're going to go ahead and do is actually use our stress response and change how we respond to the situations, whether it's actually changing the situation or changing how we think about it, to change the negative stress to positive stress. We truly do get to look at these challenges as opportunities and believe it, okay, not just because we're reading the cheesy motivational poster, okay? So as we're doing this, we're going to start to look at these situations in terms of, okay, what can I do about it, right, that control? What can I learn from this? What strengths do I have to do it? Okay, and we'll become overall more stress hardy. We're going to literally change how our brain and our nervous system occurs. Okay, how our nervous system responds. Sorry, I was reading the next slide. Now, let's talk about what prompts all this stuff. Right, it's when change occurs, and recognize that people. It's hard for people, especially to take responsibility for their part in change and what they have to do in the responsibility. There's a really neat concept I read a little bit ago. Dr. Daniel Goleman, he's the person that kind of developed the academic concept of emotional intelligence, and he has a newsletter, and I want to say about a year ago or something, one of the topics of his newsletter was that people really, we actually do like change as long as we have control over it, as long as we know what's going on, as long as we know what the impacts are, as long as we feel comfortable with our part in it, right? And so recognize that if people don't know what's going on, they don't feel they have control, they don't know what their part is, they don't know what's going to happen, change is really, really hard, okay? And especially if it's something that's very negatively stressful, it's really hard for people to take responsibility for that. Number one, because we don't want to take on any blame, but the other thing is we don't have that certainty. Do we want to put ourselves out there? Okay, so number one, typically, even though Dr. Goleman says we enjoy it, okay, for most people it is kind of difficult. and recognize that people respond to change and distress very, very differently. I mean, have you noticed that? Have you noticed some people are handling all this really differently than you are, right? To the point where you're like, really? Is that how you're going to respond to it? There's so many factors, right? There's our personality, there's our brain function, it's our blood sugar level at the time, it's our experience, it's our culture, it's our beliefs, it's right, all these things. And so one of the things I want you to recognize and really support is that everybody's going to have a different response to stress. And just because it's different, it doesn't mean it's natural, normal, healthy, and helpful, right? It might be really, really beneficial to them. And so remember, it's about relationship and emotional intelligence, right? Recognizing, and this is empathy, recognizing where somebody's coming from is valid for them. It might not be valid for you. You might not understand it at all. You might not agree with it at all. It doesn't mean it's not valid for them, okay? And so recognize that people are going to have all these different responses, and the same person can have different responses, again, depending on the day, their blood sugar, whether or not they got enough sleep, right, stuff like that. So when we're looking at this, we're going to be looking at big concepts, and then it's up to us to go ahead and figure out how we apply those concepts in real life, because one size doesn't fit all. The concepts do fit, but the nitty-gritty details, and that's part of the exciting challenge, right? How we can go ahead and be flexible for each of these situations, for each of these individuals with whom we're interacting, okay? So some of the dynamics, some of the things of which to be aware, depending on who the person is that some people just, they feel awkward, ill at ease, self-conscious, right? They might try to get out of it. You can go ahead and ask them for their feedback or their input, right? It's probably not going to come. And then there are people who think what they have to give up, right? They're focusing on the old way, right? So we're going to do this change, and then they're focusing on, we're going to be talking about grief and loss in just a little bit as well, okay? So they're still focused on the old, what they have to get up. And have you noticed that a lot of people are still trying to get back to the normal from last, like, February, which is gone, by the way. Okay, we're never going back to that. But some people will be focusing on that, and they can't even turn their focus to moving forward. Some people feel very alone, even if it's about everybody. And that sometimes can look kind of narcissistic, right? They're making it all about them. Well, yeah, but we all kind of do. Okay, but this might be this person's focus, right? They feel they're the only one that's being impacted. People can only handle so much change. And this is true for everybody, but the level of change a person can handle does differ from person to person. And so you might have some people responding with, okay, no more, right? And you might not have that response. Other people might not. But if they do, they do. Okay, it's valid for them. The other thing is that people are at different levels of readiness, depending how long they've been ready for it, if they're a part of it, if their decision. Okay, so you might have the same group of people that the same change is impacting that are very, very much at different levels to be able to go ahead and do this, okay? People will be concerned that they don't have enough resources, the time, the money, the skills, the energy, okay, stuff like that. And for a lot of people, if you take the pressure off, right, because it takes time to change, if you take the pressure off, they'll go back to their old behavior. For any of you that are parents, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Which, by the way, I'm not equating your coworkers, your team members to children, okay? But this is something that we as parents, we know, especially if the change is something our kids say they don't want to do. Hey, guess what? You're starting to do new chores. Yay! If we don't stay on it, okay. Now, the thing you will discover over time, and this is what you want to develop with you, is that you want to go ahead and develop self-motivated, resilient people that they don't need the pressure, right? Once it's been discussed and decided, they go do that, okay? But we're not always going to get that. So you might just have some people that are comfortable. They don't like the change. They want to stay where they are for a variety of reasons, and they'll just go back to that. And you might have people that are demonstrating a number of these, okay? So I want you to be aware of all those dynamics. All of these are natural and normal. It's kind of supposed to happen, okay? And that's part of our process to go ahead and address these dynamics, not just the identified change or identified problem, also these nuances about what it means to be a human being and change, okay? Now, let's go ahead and talk about some of the phases, the transitions of change. So we'll be talking about the change curve. And pretty much for any change that's impactful, we're going to go through this. Now, the speed and the length of time we stay in each of these quadrants varies on the change, varies on the person, but you can pretty much expect this is going to happen, okay? So the first one is denial, okay? No, it's not really going to happen. It's not going to happen here. If the change is something that is painful or negative, you can have numbness, you can have denial in terms of everything's fine, everything's the same as usual, okay? Not really looking at it, minimizing, or simply refusing to listen. Again, this is actually natural and normal. And one of the ways that this is natural and normal is that our brains are set up, our nervous systems are set up, and in many ways our cultural rules are set up to keep ourselves safe, which means keep everything the same in terms of what we know. If we know what's going on, we can keep ourselves safe, right? That uncertainty is what's very stressful. And so our initial response, our initial brain response, based on these survival things, is to keep everything the same. Nope, not happening. Change isn't happening. Okay. Now, hopefully, this doesn't last very long, okay? But I do want to point out denial is natural and normal. It's kind of what is supposed to happen for us, okay? So first one's denial. Then, well, no, I don't want to. Why should I? And again, this can be tapping into that survival, right? That uncertainty. I don't know what's going on. And then you can have anger. You can have loss and hurt, the stubbornness, the blaming others, complaining, even to the point of getting sick. Okay, here's a little bonus that you have because you have me here today. We have a tendency to compartmentalize ourselves, right? So, like we have our physical body, right? And if something goes wrong with our physical body, we see our body doctor, right? We have our emotions. And if something's going wrong with that, we see our feelings doctor, right? And as much as we like to think they're separate, they actually aren't. They're all connected. As a matter of fact, there's a field of study. There's a science around that connectivity. As a matter of fact, this is one of my favorite words. I'm going to spell it for you. So if you're taking notes, go ahead and start on the left side of your page. This actually is a long word. You ready? Okay, here we go. PSYCHONEURO IMMUNOLOGY. Psychoneuroimmunology, otherwise known as PNI. Yeah, I know, PNI would have been easier to say, but I really sound smart when I say psychoneuroimmunology. Okay, let's go ahead and break it down. Ology means study of. Psycho means, I'm not talking about your ex. Psycho means mind. Neuro means brain and nervous system, and immune is our immune system, our body. This is the study of our mind-brain-body connection. One of the things I want to point out is that when we're going through change, it's stressful. Whether it's positively or negatively stressful, we might not know yet, okay? But for a lot of people, it's negatively stressful. That stress can actually manifest physically. So if you notice you're going through this big system change, right? Your team is bringing on a new rule, or you have a new goal, or you have a new employee, right? And you might notice that some people seem to be getting sick more or having headaches, or yeah, that can actually be a physical manifestation of emotional stress. Okay. Want to make sure that you're supporting people in that. And if you're not addressing the stress, chances are you're still going to see that. Okay, so sometimes this resistance can actually manifest physically. This emotional resistance can manifest physically, okay, in terms of things like illness. And also doubting our own ability. Can I do this? A lot of the resistance, like we said, we don't have the certainty around it. And if I'm not sure about this, how do I know the outcome is going to be good, right? We as human beings are wired to feel, and this is good news, we're wired to feel anxiety and fear around issues of safety, right? That's what, when people tell me they're fearless, I actually get kind of concerned, because to me, I'm like, how do you assess risk, right? How do you make decisions? We're supposed to have those feelings, but the thing is, those feelings are there to help make sure that we're safe and secure. But the safety and security doesn't have to be just physical; it can be emotional as well, right? And so what we might find is that resistance is because we don't emotionally feel secure, and it's a natural, normal body-brain response, right? So again, the resistance is natural, normal, and hopefully it won't take very long, because we really want to go ahead and get into the exploration phase. okay? This is when it starts to get fun. This is when it's not so uncomfortable. And this is when people are, at the very least, resigned to the fact that it's happening. But it's in terms of, okay, let's start looking forward. This is going to happen. What's going to happen to me, right? What's my part? What might I have to do? What are the possibilities? Now, there's a lot of chaos, right? Because now we're moving. It's at this point where we're really starting to move from the old to the new, okay? Again, natural, normal. Then there's indecisiveness, unfocused work, right? How are we doing this? How does this apply? And this is a really good opportunity to literally explore not only the change itself, but also how it's impacting us and all of those things we might not even know. We don't know what we don't know. And this exploration stage starts to give us some ideas of what we don't know, like how we're even going to implement the change or why it's important to us, right? All those things, okay? So you can see a lot of that chaos. You can see the indecisiveness, the unfocused work because we don't know where to put our energy. The other thing, though, and this is, like I said, this is where it gets fun. This is where the negative stress is starting to turn to positive stress. We're starting to get that sense of control, and we're going to get that energy and that focus to clarify the goals and looking at our strengths and resources and options and considering all these things because we're going to go ahead, we start to figure out where we're going. This is where the learning and growth starts to happen. Okay, like I said, this is the fun part. And we want to go ahead and as we go through life, no, we're going to go through denial, we're going to go through resistance, absolutely, but we don't have to spend a lot of time there because we're ready to go ahead and get to the exploration stage, okay? And we might be there for a while as we're clarifying these things, as we're changing the negative stress to positive stress. This is where we have when we're in the denial and the resistance, this is where we do the pep talk, right? It's coming, okay? This is where it starts to feel good. And then we get to the point, and this is where we'd like to sit, right? This is where it feels comfortable. This is where we'd like to be all the time of, okay, we're in it. Okay, where am I headed? We have the focus. We have the teamwork. We have the vision. We're on this. Now, we don't always get there cleanly, okay? And you might have a whole bunch of your team that are in the commitment phase and still somebody that's in denial or resistance, absolutely. But this is where we want to go ahead and sit. Now, here's the bad news. The bad news is that if we sit in commitment too long, eventually that stagnates, right? And we're going to have to make some more change. The good news is that when we do this right, we know that's what's going to happen. We might not know how it's going to look at the start, but we know eventually that's going to happen, okay? And so we do want to sit in this part as long as it's healthy until it's time to make some more change. And then we'll go through those transitions again, okay? And so we want to go ahead and really look at being active participants in our life and recognizing that we are going to, if we're healthy, we are going to have these changes. We might even want to precipitate, not change for change's sake. We want to make sure we precipitate so we don't stagnate, okay? Because that is, like I said, how we learn and grow. This is what gives us the opportunity and the energy and the focus to make that positive change, to explore new areas, learn new skills, think differently, become better. If we do the same thing every day for decades, if we're in the same place, it feels safe and secure, but we're actually stagnating, right? So you get to go ahead as a leader, go ahead and help your team through that, and also, when it's needed, precipitate these changes, okay? Now, remember I was talking about PNI, right, psychoneuroimmunology. Be aware of all the ways that it will manifest, right? So we talked about being sick, okay, but it can manifest a whole bunch of other ways. And the reason I'm pointing this out is that we want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for people to change that negative stress to positive stress, to gain some type of control. So if you're seeing a lot of these things, it could be a negative stress response, and you might want to have a conversation about what you can do about this, right? So if we're seeing the anxiety, maybe even some depression, the irritability, the short fuse, anything that has to do with brain function, right? Concentration, memory, thinking ability. The other thing is that it taps into things like self-esteem, right? We're talking about that emotional security, so loss of confidence, being emotional, hard to stay internally motivated, and the negative talk. Oh, we can't do this, right? Going back to that negative stress. And you can have really anything in terms of body. Now, one of the things I want to point out, and this is why I encourage a lot of you to have really proactive conversations with yourself and with your team about how the stress is impacting them, is because sometimes, believe it or not, we don't recognize these signs. Sometimes we don't recognize the brain stuff either, okay? But sometimes we don't recognize the body signs either. And the reason is that we as human beings are remarkably adaptive. We can learn and to adjust and adapt to anything, really. The bad part about it is that if we adjust to something without actually addressing the problem, right? So we make a change, but the underlying problem isn't addressed. We normalize the problem then. And we can normalize anything, right? We can normalize all these things. And you might actually know this. Have you ever, and I know I'm describing a lot of you, have you ever had a few days or a few years with not enough sleep, right? And then you get a night or two of really good sleep, and you wake up the next morning going, whoa, I had no idea how tired I was, right? You had normalized that fatigue, right? So sometimes we can actually have things like tension and muscle aches and high blood pressure and fatigue and sleep problems and right, all this stuff, and we don't even know it, okay? And so one of the things I encourage you to do is be aware of your stress. And when you're feeling stressed, do something about it. Change the situation or change the way you're thinking about it to reduce the negative stress into positive stress, because it will manifest physically, and it can get worse over time, okay? So be aware of the body stuff. And in terms of behavior changes, now I am recommending that you're looking at changes in patterns, because that can be related to the change itself, the situational change. So if somebody was normally withdrawn, right, they might be very, very shy, it doesn't mean they're stressed out, if that's their normal, okay? But if you're seeing any changes, okay, including, and the reason I'm emphasizing this is because this is actually a really big problem right about now, increased use of things like alcohol or even smoking, of chemical use, because a lot of people, and like I said, we're seeing a huge increase in chemical use with the pandemic because it works temporarily, okay? Something's addictive if it works on the brain like naturally occurring brain chemicals, right? I think we've all heard of the opioid epidemic. Our brain produces opiates. That's why the opioid medication is so powerful, right? Because our brain is all set up to receive it. So a lot of times people are using these chemicals to feel better, and it does work temporarily, okay? But it doesn't actually address the problem, and now you might have an addiction issue going on, okay? And so, like I said, we're seeing an increase across the board in that, so I just want to be aware of that, okay? So if you're seeing changes in patterns of behavior, if something is different, something's different, right? So you might want to figure out what that is. So those are some signs to watch for. The other thing is that, folks, everybody you know, me, we're all experiencing grief and loss. Every one of us, because we've all lost something. In a change, we're all going to lose something, right? Because we don't have what we used to have, even if it's a positive change, okay? And the reason I say now all of us are going through that is because with everything going on, at the very least, we've lost our routines, right? But there's a lot of other things that we can go ahead and lose. And we're looking at change in general, but especially the changes that have been occurring recently. It's, right, loss of safety, of security. When we're looking at things that impact our job, it could be the potential for loss of belonging, power, the future, security, meaning, control, because what do our jobs provide us? Our jobs are very powerful. They provide us, with money, right? But also with identity and focus and goals and worth. And okay, so when we're looking at changes, especially in the workplace, there's a huge potential for loss. And so I want you to be aware that what you might be seeing is a grief response. Again, it's natural and normal, okay? And it's going to take some time to go through that, and having discussions about it can really help identify that, okay? Can help relieve some of that feeling, okay? Now, one of the things I'm hoping that you're getting out of this is that we have a lot of control over this, right? There's a lot of things that we can go ahead and do, and we're going to go ahead and create positive attitudes, okay? I even mentioned that earlier. And attitude is everything. Remember I was talking about ABC. Our thoughts influence our emotional responses. So we want to go ahead and make sure that we change our thought patterns if they're not healthy or helpful. And the way we determine if something's not healthy or helpful is we just ask, right? Is this helping? So like for me with the Nobody's Ever Mean to Me, I used to take everything so personally, everything. If it happened to me, around me, or impacted me, it was about me. And so I had a really good therapist that just very gently, consistently said, is this helping? Is that thought pattern helping? Okay? And it wasn't, right? So we went to go ahead and change it. Now, when we're going ahead and looking at these thoughts, we do need to have positive ones, right? Because if you're saying, oh, I'm not upset about that, I'm not upset about that, I'm not upset about that because you're trying to replace that thought pattern, you're not giving you anything to replace it with, okay? So you want to actually have something that's beneficial. And again, positive attitude is focusing on solutions. Now, when we do this, when we're really focusing on that attitude, we literally change our mind. We change our reality. We have filtering systems in our brain. One of the primary filtering systems is called the reticular activating system. You don't need to remember that. That's just something else I say to sound smart, okay? And what the RAS does is it filters information in. It keeps stuff out so we don't get overwhelmed. And we control that. I mean, part of it's survival, right? So if a car is coming toward us, not slowing down, we're going to notice that. Our filter is going to let that data in. But otherwise, it's what we tell it. It's kind of like that person that's miserable all the time. You know what I'm talking about, right? They're always miserable. And you try to convince them they're not miserable. Look, all the things for which you should be grateful, right? And it's like they don't even hear you. It's because they actually don't. I mean, the sound waves are going in their ears, right? Wah, 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 wah. But they're not processing it because that's not what their filter's letting in. Their filter's letting in all the data that supports what they told their filter to let in. I'm miserable. So if you're looking at change as terrible, horrible, bad, I don't want this, it's not supposed to happen, it's not fair, what's your brain going to let in? If instead you're changing your attitude to have that positive attitude, what's your brain going to let in? Okay? And so what happens is we get to go, when we're active participants, we get to look at these situations as those opportunities for learning and growth, right? Winston Churchill, success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. Right? We can use everything. So attitude is everything. We can literally change our minds. We can change our reality. Okay? So how do we do this with our team? Be prepared, right? Expect the stuff to happen. It's not bad. It's natural. It's uncomfortable. Okay? We do want to minimize how long we're staying in the uncomfortable phases, okay? But be prepared, okay? It's going to happen, and we can use it. Then we're going to go ahead and look at our attitude, because our attitude is literally contagious. I used to use that as a metaphor, right? Attitude is contagious. And then I found the research. Did you know that as we're electrical and chemical organisms, right? We have a bunch of chemicals flowing through our system and electricity, our brain, our nervous system. That electricity can actually be measured now. We have machines that can measure it. For some people, that electrical activity can be measured up to 18 inches from their body. Unless you're the Dalai Lama, the Buddhist guy, you know, he actually changes the electrical activity of the entire room. But we're not the Dalai Lama, 18 inches. When we talk about attitude is everything and attitude is contagious, it is literal. Have you ever stood next to somebody and you either got warm fuzzies or you got not warm fuzzies, right? You know what I'm talking about? We feel the energy. So attitude impacts, obviously, our behaviors, and it actually impacts our energy. People can feel it, okay? So we're going to keep our attitude, not everything's wonderful, because sometimes it's not, but that positive attitude, being active participants, changing the negative stress to positive stress, having that solution focus. And then when we do all this, we're going to be using all these opportunities as the chance to learn and grow. How can we use this? Every situation, we can learn something from it. Okay, again, she's a motivational poster, but it's absolutely true, okay? And then in terms of practically applying this, one of the best things you can do is listen. It's one of the best skills we can develop as a human being, and we don't do it well, right? Partly because we have all that chatter in our heads, in our brains. I call it the monkeys in the trees. As a matter of fact, if I were to have all of you write down everything you've been thinking about for the last, 40-some minutes, other than what I've been talking about, some of you would have pages of stuff, right? So it's hard to quiet the monkeys. The other thing is that we have a tendency to listen from our perspective, right? How we see the world and what we say. And it's hard, really hard to listen from another person's perspective. Remember that empathy I was talking about? Okay. So we're going to actively listen, the best skill you can develop, right? Sometimes that's all you need to do to help somebody get through the change, right? Because people want to be heard. Remember I was talking about the main reason that people leave their jobs is their supervisor? The main reason given for that is that they weren't heard, that they weren't listened to, okay? So we're going to listen. We're going to be aware of the energy we put into the interaction. We're going to remain calm ourselves. We're not going to take it personally. Their process is their process. The other thing is that we want to keep a sense of humor. A lot of what's been going on, that filter I was talking about, the reticular activating system, it's been focused on survival. And a lot of us are really, really focused on survival. And there's life outside the crisis. I'm not saying we're ignoring the crisis. That's not healthy. There's life outside the crisis. And so we want to go ahead and look for the humor as well in life. As a matter of fact, the American Medical Association recommends that adults should get at least 20 minutes of laughter a day. Even before all of this, the average adult American got under 2. Yeah, that's a problem. So we're going to keep our sense of humor, make sure our body language and the communication is open and relaxed. Otherwise, we might be communicating something we don't want to communicate. And we want to go ahead and make sure that we get that sense of control. So we want to go ahead and document everything, follow up on what we say we're going to go ahead and do, make sure everything matches so that we can all be part of this and gain that sense of control of what we're doing in the process and where we're going. We're not documenting for disciplinary purposes or to throw somebody in the bus. It's so we can go ahead and get that sense of control, okay? Get that focus, make things very, very clear, and have them document as well, right? What they want, what they thought the conversation was about, right? Really powerful. And this doesn't take long, right? This can be in that 30-second interaction, okay? We want to go ahead and focus it. By doing this, you're creating a dynamic. You're really, really creating healthy teams, and you're creating that healthy relationship, okay? Now, when issues and concerns come up, which they should, have I mentioned listening? Right? Listening is a part of that. Ask questions because we want to understand their perspective, right? We want to listen from their perspective, like I mentioned ago. Okay, so how, what, when, where, how, all the journalistic questions. We're going to be objective and fair, recognizing where they're coming from is valid. Just because our ideas are our ideas, it doesn't mean it's their truth. And then ask them for solutions. If a problem impacts them, don't you want their solution? A great resource for this, a great example of this is Southwest Airlines, which is my favorite airline. Southwest Airlines has it's an older book, but it's called Nuts. It's about how Southwest Airlines is really creative and they're open to problem solving and input from the employees and how they manage change and transition. Okay, really nice book. Okay, Nuts. So we're going to ask them for their solutions, and unless it's immoral, illegal, or unethical, why don't we go ahead and consider it, right? We're going to challenge that negativity, and the negativity is feeding the problem, okay, right? Attitude is everything. What are we feeding? Are we feeding the problem or are we feeding the solution? Because whatever we feed grows. So if they have a problem, acknowledge the problem, and then move into a solution. They bring up the problem again, move into the solution. Okay, so we're going to be gently but firm. Be aware of confidentiality. People need to know that they can trust you. If they can't trust you, they're not going to be talking to anybody about any of this. Okay, so be aware of confidentiality. You're part of a team, right? So we're going to work on this together, which, by the way, using terms like we, us, and our. Now make sure it's actually accurate. So like sometimes my husband will use the term we, the pronoun we, and my response is, we who? Me, we? Are you asking me to do that? Okay, so make sure it's accurate, but whenever you can, use the terms we, us, and our. It's very joining, psychologically very joining, okay? And then again, we're documenting this, right? We're agreeing on actions. We're going to set up a follow meeting. We're going to be part of this change process. And some things we can go ahead and do that can help in this change process to cope with the stress are get routines, right? That safety, that security, that consistency. Get whatever routines you can. Encourage breaks, lots of breaks. People should be taking a break every 30 to 60 minutes. And I'm not talking about a 15-minute break, right, because that can take all day. But a break every 30 to 60 minutes where they stand, where they stretch, where they walk around. If they're sitting down all day, have you heard sitting is the new smoking? Yeah, it's actually very stressful on our body, our immune system. So if you take a break every 30 to 60 minutes, you stand, you stretch, you breathe, you walk around for 3 minutes, research suggests you can reduce your sedentary risks up to 50%. Yeah, right, so we're taking lots of breaks. I had a participant share a couple weeks ago, and I just loved it so much, I told him I was stealing it from him. He does what he calls a 20-20. And what that is every 20 minutes, He shuts off his computer monitor. He swivels, he turns his way from his desk. He stretches, he breathes, just for about 20 seconds, closes his eyes, okay, and then comes back. And he says, it's a lifesaver, okay? So 2020, so lots of breaks. We're going to address the problems. We're going to address the conflicts when they come up. Otherwise, it's going to keep us stuck in those earlier phases. We're looking at common goals, we, us, and our, right? So we're on this together. And to get that sense of control, what are we going to do first, right? The small, manageable steps. I think we've all heard the saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Or the joke, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, okay? So we want to break it down so we get that sense of control. And make sure that people know what the boundaries are. They know what the rules are. They know what the structure is. Even if they don't like it, even if we don't agree with it, we still need it, right? Because it gives us that sense of safety and security. We know what's going to happen. We can trust what's going on. So which, by the way, if you say you're going to do something, you better do it, positively or negatively. Otherwise, people can't trust you, okay? What are the boundaries then? It's really hard, okay? Now, in terms of supporting your team, we want to make sure that we're supporting them. It's not about us. Okay? We're looking at the behavior, not the person. We're not going to be blaming or shaming, whatever. Okay, we're looking at the behavior. We're going to go ahead and have the focus of addressing it, understanding it, explaining what's going on, clarify, and have the resolve to change. Be as impartial as possible. It's hard. We all have our bias, okay? But we also want to go ahead and make sure that we take all these perspectives, collaborate, share that information because it is a team, and be strengths-based. A lot of you are familiar with strengths-based management, strengths-based team building. You might have read Tom Rath's Strengths Finders 2.0. You want to give somebody a sense of security. You want to give somebody a way to change the negative stress to positive stress. Align with their strengths. If you're aligning with their weaknesses, what's going to happen? Okay, so be strengths-based and make sure you use your EAP. Okay, I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. And have I mentioned self-care? So make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Like the picture shows, if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of others. When we're on the airplane and they're saying, in case of loss of cabin air pressure, air masks will drop from the ceiling. If you're traveling with somebody else, right, you need to put yours on first. Because if you pass out while you're putting on theirs, it doesn't do you any good, okay? So make sure that you're taking care of yourself so you can take care of others. Be aware of what helps you relax, what helps you manage stress. Make sure you're getting enough sleep, which is about 7.5 hours of uninterrupted sleep a night. Most adult Americans get between 4 and 6. That's not enough. And I've had clients tell me, I'm too busy to get enough sleep. I'll sleep when I'm dead. And my response is, because I'm really subtle, well, you're going to be dead faster. Okay, so get enough sleep. Make sure you're moving. Make sure you're taking those breaks as well. You're going to be walking around. Make sure you're eating well. Be aware of your chemical intake. Get your vitamin D. Keep hydrated, right? I mean, all these things that we know, okay? Engage your sense of humor. And celebrate yourself. Be strengths-based, not just for your team, but for yourself as well. And if you need any assistance on all of this, okay, I do recommend your employee assistance program. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a free benefit. It's not even part of your health insurance, so you don't have to pay a copay, and it's completely confidential. It doesn't go through HR or anything. So if you're having issues with any of this that's listed on the page, please go ahead and get help. And if you need counseling, and that's why I'm kind of biased toward that, right? Because I'm a counselor. It provides you with counseling for yourself. And again, it's not going through health insurance, for yourself or your family members. Okay. The other thing is that if you're struggling to support somebody on your team, you can call the EAP. They have some managerial support services that can help you support others as well. And of course, they're going to recommend that you refer them to the EAP as well. Okay. So make sure that you use that resource. It's there for you. I absolutely love it. I think it's amazing. I am biased. But I do recommend that you contact them for that. Okay. Now, having said all that, I'm going to give you some homework, and then we'll have a couple minutes for any last questions. And I'm going to make the homework really, really simple, okay, because I know you have a lot on your plate. I want you to go ahead and think of a couple, 3 things that really stood out for you today. Okay, not 57, just 2 or 3. One of them I hope would be accessing the EAP. Write them down. Don't store them in your memory banks, right? Not a good place to have anything. Write them down. And then and it could be on anything, right? A piece of paper, a back of a napkin, whatever's in front of you. Write them down. And then when you're taking those breaks, right, when you're doing the 20-20, okay, you're taking those breaks every 20 minutes, I want you to look at that piece of paper. I want you to go ahead and look at it and then do something small around it. It doesn't have to be anything major. It can be to put a note on your calendar to contact somebody to check in with them. It could be, okay, I'm going to take a nice deep breath here. It doesn't matter what it is. But during the course of the day, when you're taking those lots of breaks, I want you to look what you wrote down and do something around that. Small behavior, right? Because there's a connection between our thoughts and beliefs, our feelings, and our behaviors. And when you do that every day for a bunch of days, like, 30 or so, what's going to happen is that you're going to start changing your mind. You're going to start rehabituating your reticular activating system and be creating new neural pathways in your brain. You're going to be creating some of those new normals for you based on those points. Okay, so just write down 3 things, look at it bunches, and you're going to be changing your mind. You're going to be changing your reality around this within 30 days. And if you do this for 30 days, at the end of about a month, you will start to feel healthier, more productive, and less stressed. I promise you that, and I don't make promises lightly. Okay, so that's your homework assignment. And now I'm going to go ahead and do something that's really hard for me, and that's mute myself. I'm going to give you a minute to put any other questions in there and start typing. Go. Okay, so it's not been quite a minute, but I'm not very patient. So, folks, thank you. I'm seeing a lot of thank yous in there. I'm so glad. Yes, you'll be getting a copy of the slides that will be recorded, okay? And I just want to say I appreciate the fact that you set aside this time. I know how busy you are, so thank you so much. Take good care of yourselves. And, folks, let's change the world. Thanks, everybody.
Grace, thank you so much for all of your information today. I think it was really, really helpful, and I think a lot of people got a lot out of it. So thanks again, and everybody have a great weekend.